Julian's world was one of elegant precision. From his small shop in Boston's historic Beacon Hill, he repaired time. He didn't just fix watches, he resurrected 18th-century mantel clocks, coaxed life back into Victorian automatons, and found the lost heartbeats of pocket watches that had been silent for a century. His hands, steady and patient, moved with a grace that felt out of place in the modern world. His life with Evelyn was a study in contrasts. Where Julian's shop was filled with the warm scent of sandalwood and old brass, their apartment was a glass and steel testament to modern minimalism. Every surface was clean, every line sharp. It was Evelyn's world, and he was often just a visitor in it. She didn't move in his world of slow-ticking escapements. She flew in the world of venture capital. Evelyn was a force. She was the one who saw the future, who funded the biotech and AI startups that were reshaping the city. She was brilliant, driven, and, Julian had to admit, increasingly distant. He loved her. He loved the sharp, focused energy she brought into a room, the way her mind cut through nonsense, and the surprising vulnerability he'd see late at night when she thought he was asleep. But the space between them had grown. Their dinners were punctuated by the tap-tap-tap of her phone, her conversations filled with acronyms and funding rounds he didn't understand. "The EVM deal is finally closing," she said one Tuesday, looking past him, her eyes focused on a future he couldn't see. "It's significant." "That's great, Evie," he'd said, testing the tension on a new mainspring. "Is that the one for memory?" "It's not for memory, Julian," she'd replied, a rare edge in her voice. "It's for neurological trauma. It's revolutionary." She softened, seeing his expression. "Sorry, it's just a lot. I'll be in San Francisco for the conference all weekend. We'll celebrate when I'm back." He'd smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. He felt like one of his broken clocks, out of time with the woman he was married to. That Saturday, with the apartment feeling unnervingly silent, Julian decided to tackle a project he'd been avoiding. Evelyn's family heirloom. It was a heavy, ornate French mantel clock that had belonged to her grandmother. It hadn't run in years. Evelyn kept it for sentiment, though she was the least sentimental person he knew. He laid it carefully on his workbench in their spare room. It was a beautiful piece, but the mechanism was frozen. As he gently disassembled the casing, his fingers brushed against a small, almost invisible seam in the velvet-lined base. It wasn't part of the clockwork. It was a hidden drawer. His heart gave a strange, hard thump. This was her family's. It felt like a violation, but his innate curiosity, the same drive that made him dismantle complex machines, took over. He pressed the seam. A small, triangular section of the wood popped open with a dry click. Inside, there were only two things. The first was a small, tarnished silver locket, shaped like a heart. It was child-sized. He pried it open with his thumbnail. It was empty. Two hollow ovals stared back at him, waiting for faces that weren't there. The second was a key. It was old, made of heavy brass and elegantly crafted. But it wasn't a winding key for a clock. It was a safe deposit key. The head of the key was cast in a strange, intricate symbol, a serpent, a dragon, eating its own tail. The Ouroboros. Julian sat back, the scent of dust and old secrets filling his nose. Evelyn's story had always been simple, almost stark. "My parents died when I was in college," she'd told him. "Car crash. I was an only child. There's no one else, just me." He had always accepted it. It explained her relentless self-reliance, her focus on the future, her lack of interest in a past she'd claimed was empty. But this locket and this key felt heavy. They were not the possessions of a woman with an empty past. They were the possessions of a woman with a locked one. He closed the drawer, his hands suddenly unsteady. The clock's silent, frozen face seemed to mock him. For the first time in his life, Julian looked at the woman he loved and realized he didn't know her at all. The suspicion was immediate and cold. An only child? An empty locket? A key to a secret vault? A new, terrible mechanism began to tick inside him. The next few days were a quiet torture. When Evelyn returned, she was electric, flushed with the success of her conference. She kissed him, the faint, sterile scent of the airplane clinging to her hair. "We did it, Julian," she'd said. pouring 2 glasses of wine. "Avum is a go. The next phase is funded." "That's wonderful, Evie." He'd held his glass, the key and the locket feeling like lead weights in his pocket. He wanted to ask, "What's this key? Whose locket is this?" But the words wouldn't come. He saw the new wall of success around her, and he felt small, like a man with a tiny, antiquated hobby. To challenge her now would be to admit his snooping, to admit that, while she was building the future, he was digging up a past she had clearly buried. So he began his own quiet investigation. He became a spy in his own home. He started with the key. He took a photo and sent it to a friend, an old-world locksmith named Petrov, who specialized in antique safes. Petrov's reply came an hour later. "Julian, this is not a common key. The symbol is the Ouroboros. It is the emblem of the Scribes and Alchemists Club, a private society here in Boston. Very old, very rich. They call themselves the Ouroboros Club. This is a key to their private vault in the basement. They are particular. You will not get in. Only the key's owner. A private club. Old money. Evelyn's family hadn't just died, they'd been wealthy. Wealthy enough to belong to a secret society. Another lie, or at least a significant omission. The locket was a dead end. But the lies, they made him bolder. While Evelyn was at a late-night board dinner, Julian did something he had never done. He went into her home office, the sleek, minimalist room that was her true fortress, and opened her laptop. He knew her password. It was the founding date of her first company. It had never occurred to him to use it against her. He wasn't interested in her emails. He was interested in her finances. He had his own comfortable income, and they kept their day-to-day accounts joint. But her real wealth, the VC money, was in a separate, complex web of accounts. He found the one for her personal expenses. He scrolled through the statements, mortgages for their apartment, payments for her Tesla, travel expenses, and then a recurring payment. One payment on the first of every month for the last 8 years. $5,000. It wasn't a stock purchase or a loan. It was a transfer to an entity he didn't recognize. Hadley Creek Sanitarium. The memo line was always the same. AR Discretionary Fund. Julian's blood went ice cold. A sanitarium, $5,000, every single month. His mind flashed to the empty child's locket. ARA child. Evelyn had a secret child, a sick child, hidden away in an expensive private institution, a child she had never, ever mentioned. He felt sick. He closed the laptop, his reflection staring back at him from the dark screen. The man who stared back was not a husband. He was an intruder, and the woman he was married to was a stranger. He knew he couldn't confront her, not like this. If she had built a lie this enormous, this towering, she would crush him for discovering it. He needed proof. He needed to know who AR was. The next day, Julian went to his shop and sold a prize 1920s Patek Philippe he had spent a year restoring. He got $10,000 for it. The sale felt like a betrayal of his own world, but he didn't care. He used the money to hire a private investigator. Ms. Thorne was not what he expected. She was sharp, dressed in a minimalist business suit that would have rivaled Evelyn's, and her office was as clean and digital as a tech startup. She specialized in discreet corporate and spousal investigations. Julian sat across from her, the $10,000 feeling like dirty money in his account. "My wife," he started, his voice thick. "Evelyn Rousseau. I think she may have a child I don't know about." He gave Thorne the name, Hadley Creek Sanitarium, and the initials. A.R. Thorne was silent, her fingers tapping on a tablet. "This is expensive, Mr. Hayes. Hadley Creek is not a local hospital. It's a high-security, long-term care facility in the Berkshires. They protect their clients' privacy with extreme prejudice." "I know," Julian said. "That's why I'm here. I need to know who AR is. I'll need a retainer. The $10,000 will be a start." Julian nodded. "Do it." For a week, Julian lived in a fog. He'd go to his shop, the intricate gears of the clocks seeming to mock his own clumsy, broken life. He'd sit at dinner with Evelyn, smiling, talking about the weather, while a storm raged inside him. Every time she looked at her phone, he wondered, "Are you checking on your secret child?" Then Thorne's email arrived. It was simple. "Report ready. My office. 4 p.m. Julian's hands were shaking so badly he could barely lock his shop. Miss Thorne's office was cool and quiet. She didn't waste time. She slid a single file across the desk. "You were wrong," she said, her voice neutral. "Evelyn Rousseau does not have a child." Julian's relief was so profound, so sudden, that he almost wept. He felt giddy. It was all a misunderstanding. He had betrayed her, and he was wrong. "But," Thorne continued, "you were right about the secret." She tapped the file. "AR is Adam Rousseau. He is her older brother." Julian just stared. "Her brother? She told me she was an only child." "She lied," Thorne said. "Adam Rousseau, age 41. He has been a permanent resident at Hadley Creek for 22 years. Diagnosis: severe chronic paranoid schizophrenia with catatonia." Thorne opened the file. The first page was a photo of Adam. Even in the grainy surveillance shot, his features were sharp, angular. He had Evelyn's eyes, dark, intelligent, and utterly haunted. "Why?" Julian whispered. "Why would she lie about this?" "It gets more complicated," Thorne said, turning the page. "I did a background check on the family. The father, Dr. Marcus Rousseau, was a brilliant and controversial neuroscientist. The mother died young. It was Marcus, Evelyn, and Adam. They lived in a large estate outside Boston. 22 years ago, there was a fire." "A fire?" "A massive one. It burned the family's home, including a private research lab, to the ground. The father, Marcus, died in the blaze. Evelyn, then 18, escaped without injury. Adam was pulled from the fire by paramedics, catatonic. He was institutionalized a week later. He has not spoken a word since." Julian's mind was spinning. The fire, the father's death, the brother's sudden total breakdown, and Evelyn, a lone survivor, claiming to be an only child. "She was 18, Julian said, the pieces clicking together with sickening precision. "She was left alone, with a dead father and a broken brother. So she erased him." "She erased her entire past," Thorne corrected. "She put her brother in the most expensive private care she could find and built a new life from scratch. As far as the world is concerned, Evelyn Rousseau, the venture capitalist, was born at age 18, an orphan and an only child. And the money. She's been paying for his care for 22 years. First with the insurance money from the fire, then with every dollar she earned, her entire career. It's all been for him." Julian stood up, his legs unsteady. This wasn't a story of infidelity. It was a tragedy. The distance he'd felt, her ruthless drive, her obsession with work. It wasn't ambition. It was a lifeline. It was the engine keeping her brother safe. He returned home in a daze. The apartment felt different. The sharp, cold lines no longer felt hostile. They felt like armor. He looked at the French clock on the mantel. It wasn't just an heirloom. It was a tombstone. But two things still didn't fit: the locket and the EVM deal, EVM Biotech. "It's for neurological trauma." A cold dread, more profound than any suspicion, settled over him. He went back to Evelyn's laptop. He didn't feel guilty this time. He felt like a man searching for the last piece of a bomb. He looked up EVM Biotech. The company was founded by two neuroscientists, Dr. Eris Thorne, no relation to the PI, and Dr. Lena Petrova. But the initial seed funding, the money that had launched the company 21 years ago, came from a silent benefactor. He looked at the company's mission. They were working on a revolutionary new drug protocol, one that used targeted electrical impulses to remap neural pathways damaged by trauma. A treatment for psychosis. For catatonia. Evelyn hadn't just been funding EVM. She had created it. Her entire career, her entire life, her ruthless climb to the top of the venture capital world. It wasn't just to pay for her brother's care. It was to invent his cure. The deal she had just closed wasn't just a business triumph. It was the final funding phase to get the EVM protocol approved for human trials. He suddenly remembered her words from dinner. "It's not for memory, Julian. It's for neurological trauma. It's revolutionary." He'd been married to her for 8 years, and he had never, ever seen the real woman. He wasn't married to a VC. He was married to a guardian, a sister who was trying to move heaven and earth to get her brother back from the ashes of a fire that had happened 2 decades ago. He heard her key in the door. Evelyn came in, looking exhausted but triumphant. "Julian, you're home early." She dropped her bag. a rare, genuine smile on her face. "You'll never guess who I met with. The head of the FDA. We're on the fast track, Julian. We might actually do it." Julian just stood there in the center of the room. He couldn't speak. Her smile faded, seeing his expression. "Julian? What is it? You look like you've seen a ghost." He opened his hand. On his palm sat the small, tarnished silver locket. "I think," Julian said, his voice raw, "that I just did." Evelyn's face didn't just go pale, it seemed to empty, as if her very soul had been vacuumed out of her. She stared at the locket, her hand instinctively going to her throat. "Where?" she whispered, her voice a sliver of ice. "Did you get that?" "From the clock," Julian said, his own voice quiet. "I was fixing it. I found a hidden compartment." He held up the Ouroboros key. "And this." Evelyn's breath hitched. She took a step back, her back hitting the cold glass of the apartment wall. The invincible, powerful woman he knew vanished. In her place was a terrified 18-year-old girl. "You spied on me," she said. It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. I didn't understand," Julian said. "I found the key. I found the locket. I don't know what I thought. I found the payments to Hadley Creek. I thought you had a child." "A child?" She let out a sharp, broken laugh. "You thought I was capable of that? Of life?" "I hired a detective, Evie." The admission hung in the air, heavy and toxic. He saw the flicker of betrayal in her eyes harden into something else. Resignation. "So you know," she said, her voice flat. "You know about Adam. I know he's your brother. I know he's at Hadley Creek. I know about the fire. I know your father died. And I know you lied to me." Evelyn walked past him, her movements stiff, and poured a glass of whiskey. Her hands were shaking. "I am an only child," she said, her back to him. "The woman I am, the one you married, was born the day of that fire. The girl who came before, she died with her father." "And Adam?" Julian pressed, walking toward her. "Did he die too?" "Yes," she hissed, spinning to face him. "Adam died. The person he was, the brilliant, kind, funny older brother who gave me this locket, he burned up in that lab. What's left is just a shell, a ghost you now pay people to photograph." The anger in her voice was a wildfire, but Julian could see what was beneath it, a canyon of guilt. "The fire wasn't an accident, was it?" Julian said, the last, terrible piece falling into place. Evelyn's eyes snapped to his. The whiskey glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the polished concrete floor. She didn't seem to notice. "He was a monster," she whispered, her gaze fixed on the broken glass. "My father, not a controversial neuroscientist, a monster. He wasn't just brilliant, he was cruel. He made Adam. He pushed him, experimented on him, treated his mind like a project." She was shaking. "Adam was a genius. He saw things, he built things, but the pressure was too much. The research in that lab, it was breaking him. I saw it. I tried to stop him, but I was just the other child, the control group, the disappointment." She was crying now, silent, hot tears cutting paths down her face. Julian had never seen her cry. "That night," she continued, "Adam finally broke. He wasn't trying to escape the lab. He was trying to destroy it. He started the fire. He wanted to burn my father's journals, his prototypes, all of it. He wanted to burn him." Julian stood frozen. I tried to stop him. I ran in. The fire was everywhere. I found him. He wasn't screaming. He was just standing in the middle of it all, staring at our father who was trapped, and he was smiling. Then something fell. The smoke was too thick. I grabbed Adam and I dragged him out. I left my father in there. I left him to burn." She finally looked at Julian, her eyes a raw, open wound. "I got my brother out, but by the time the paramedics came, he was gone. He was catatonic. He hasn't said a word or moved or looked at anything in 22 years. I saved his body, Julian, but I left his mind in that fire with my father." Julian finally moved, crossing the room. He didn't touch her. He just stood in front of her. "And Avum," he said, his voice thick with the revelation. "You're not just funding it. You're trying to go back in, to pull his mind out." She nodded, wiping her face. "My father's journals, his research, I didn't let them burn. Before I pulled Adam out, I grabbed the safe box. The work was monstrous, but it was also brilliant. It's the key, the Ouroboros vault. That's where I keep them. I'm using his own monstrous work to undo the damage he did." She let out a long, shuddering breath. "I lied, Julian. I lied because my entire life is built on that lie. To be Evelyn Rousseau VC, I couldn't be Evelyn Rousseau survivor, sister of an arsonist, daughter of a monster. I had to be clean. I had to be new. I couldn't bring all that ash and smoke into this. Into us." The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the faint hum of the city outside. Julian looked at this woman, this stranger he had loved for 8 years. He had resented her for her ambition, felt small next to her success, and suspected her of the most mundane, selfish betrayals. The reality was so much larger, so much more profound, that he could barely comprehend it. He thought of his clocks. He thought of their intricate, broken mechanisms. He thought of the patience it took to find the one small, fractured piece and make it whole again. He knelt, carefully picking up the larger shards of the broken glass. "You've been holding this all alone for 22 years, he said, his voice quiet. She watched him, her breath catching. "It was my burden to hold." "No," Julian said, standing up. He walked to the mantel and picked up the child's locket. He walked back to her and pressed it into her hand. "It was his burden, and yours." He then closed his own hand over hers, his calloused, patient fingers enveloping her fist, the locket, and the secret. "And now," he said, "it's ours." Evelyn's composure finally, totally shattered. She didn't just cry, she collapsed against him, a single agonizing sob tearing out of her. Julian held her, his arms wrapped around her as if she were the most fragile, priceless, and broken mechanism he had ever tried to put back together. He didn't know what would happen with Avum. He didn't know if Adam would ever wake up. He didn't know how to repair a marriage built on a secret of this magnitude. But as he stood there, in the cold, minimalist apartment that was finally starting to feel like a home, he knew one thing. The espionage was over. The suspicion was gone. He had looked inside the clockwork, and he had found the truth. It wasn't a story of betrayal. It was a story of a desperate, terrifying, and profound love. And it was just the beginning.